So you're ready to do some maintenance on your RC machine. That's awesome. But it's a little bit more than just slapping some cleaner on here and wiping it off with a brush. There's actually some mistakes that you can make. So we've come up with this video of 5 mistakes that you should avoid. Let's get right into it. So the first maintenance mistake happens right here. Maybe you've got a hose outside that you could use to wash off your car. Maybe you've got a slop sink inside your house. The problem with that is using too much water could get into areas of the car that you don't want water in. So let's say you get water in the bearings. Well, that could cause rust. It could get into the transmission and cause rust on the gears. Maybe it even gets into the receiver box and it could harm your receiver if you didn't seal it properly. So what you want to do is first you want to take a paintbrush. You want to knock off any big chunks of dirt that you can. Perhaps you could, if you have an air compressor, you could use an air compressor to blow it off, and then use a light mist of water. If you have to use water to clean your car, just use a light mist of water to wash it off. And then when you're done, make sure you dry it off. Again, use an air compressor, use a towel, use that paintbrush again to just knock off any water. You don't want water sitting in parts that could cause problems later on down the road, again with your drive shafts, your transmission, your electronics. So do not submerge your car in water. Maintenance mistake number 2, neglecting your drive shafts. This is something you don't want to do. They're a high wear item, and the more you neglect them, the more they're going to wear. So during your routine maintenance, what you want to do is pull your drive shafts apart if possible. Take the universal joints apart, pull the pins out, wipe everything down with a cleaner, and get rid of any dirt or grime, anything that could contaminate that joint. Get rid of it, and when you go to rebuild it, use a quality grease such as a cow RC udder butter or a heavy-duty black grease, and rebuild that joint so it works really well. If you can't rebuild it with grease, put a drop of oil on there and make sure it's working properly after it's clean. The other area you want to check is if you have sliders or any other type of dirt that's collecting on a moving part of the drive shaft. Just take a brush, wipe it all off. Again, any dirt in this shaft here, this universal, could cause premature wear, and you'll have to replace that item that much sooner. Mistake number 3, not cleaning your differentials. The differentials are another high wear item, and if you neglect them, well, the more you run it, the worse it's going to get. So what you want to do is pull your differentials out any chance you get, and you want to pull them apart. And well, it's basically a lot of elbow grease, but you're just going to have to clean them up as best as you can. Use paper towels, use cleaners such as cow RC cleaners, or some people use, I know they use naphtha. It's a chemical you could get at the automotive store that really helps break down the grease and the oils and clean everything off. But you want to get all that old grease, all that old dirt off of these differentials. And you want to get rid of any grease on the inside of the differentials as well. You want to pull the differential apart and clean any old grease out that may have old metal shavings in it from the gears wearing, and you want to repack it with new grease. The other thing you want to do is if you have a ball differential, such as this one right here, you want to feel it. If it feels gritty, well, it may be time for a rebuild. You pull it all apart, wipe everything down, and if it still feels gritty after you rebuild it with new grease, then it may be time for new differential balls or new thrust balls. But the differential is a very important part of the car. Do not neglect rebuilding it. Maintenance mistake number 4, not rebuilding these babies. Your shocks. Your shocks are the most important part of your car. They're what makes it handle well. What happens with a shock is dirt collects on the shock shaft, and as the shock goes up and down, it pushes that dirt up inside the body. Even if you have a rubber boot on there, it can happen. Dust can get in there. What happens is once that dirt gets in there, it starts to wear away at the O-rings. Maybe it wears away at the piston or the inside of the body, and it prematurely wears out your shock. So what you have to do is you have to rebuild it often. Pull your shock apart, clean off the O-rings, clean out the inside, perhaps use a cleaner such as a cow RC, all-purpose cleaner, and then rebuild it with new shock oil. Rebuilding your shocks often will make them last that much longer. Maintenance mistake number 5, our final tip for this video, simply check for broken parts. While you're working on your car, rebuilding your drive shafts and checking your diffs and rebuilding your shocks, look for broken parts elsewhere, like your shock tower, maybe a suspension arm or a knuckle. Maybe there's just a hairline crack, but you want to replace those broken parts as soon as you find it. The reason being is when you're out driving and let's say you're using that broken part, it could break, and when it fails, it could take other parts out with it. So if you want to save yourself a few bucks later on down the road, you should replace any broken parts as soon as you find them. And that was our 5 most common maintenance mistakes. We really hope that you enjoyed the video and found some tips that will help you with your RC machine. If you have some tips of your own, please throw in the comment section below. We love to help out the RC community. Now, if you haven't subscribed, please click that button too. We don't want you to miss any more of our great tips and tricks. And if you need some more tips and tricks right now, you can head right over to rcdriver.com.